Authorities in Spain are tired of your drunk tourist ass. So they're planning on doing breathalyzers if a recent proposal passes. According to reports, in a crackdown on dangerous walking, Spain's Directorate General of Traffic plans to introduce breathalyzer tests for pedestrians. They also suggest introducing an off-road speed limit for joggers. The proposal, buried among other road safety suggestions, would give pedestrians responsibilities akin to drivers. What they realized was that, look, these tourists are coming over to our country, they're getting wasted, and then they're making really bad decisions when they're walking around on our streets. And so we got to do something to prevent people dying from like walking in the middle of the street while they're drunk. So when I first read this story, I thought it was crazy. But they're a little more specific, right?
This one's also a roller coaster.
It is a roller coaster.
All right, so stay with us. You think, oh, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Hold.
So they're a little more specific. So if you just happen to be walking on the sidewalk and you're having a good time, they're not going to come up to you and give you a breathalyzer test. However, if you're somehow involved in some sort of accident, then they're likely to see whether or not you were drunk and whether or not that contributed to the accident. Okay, were you jaywalking? Were you ignoring crosswalks? That kind of thing.
And Spanish police have been trained at this point to realize if you're just having fun, if you do this. Okay. And so they're not going to arrest you under those circumstances, only if you're in an accident.
Right, exactly. Okay. Now, here is some more information that might make you think that this proposal isn't so crazy. So one study found that 55% of pedestrians who had consumed alcohol ignored designated crosswalks compared to 22% of sober ones. When things went wrong, the drinkers also did themselves and possibly others far more damage. On average, they stayed 2 days longer in the hospital than sober accident victims with injuries that were typically almost twice as severe.
Okay, so yes. It turns out that when you're wasted, you don't know where you're going, and then you get in an accident that's worse than the average accident. Okay, so here's my thoughts on it. First, of course, you see the story and you're like, drunk walking? Well, what the fuck am I supposed to do? Okay, I had a bunch of beers, I got drunk. I can't drive. Now I can't walk. So how am I going to get home? If they close the bar down, which they will at some point, do I immediately become homeless until I sober up? I mean, what am I supposed to do, right? Of course, you can take a cab, but can you walk to the cab?
That's a good point.
Okay. So, but then you realize, of course, no, they're not that absurd. They're saying only if you're involved in an accident, then we'll test you and see if you contributed to that accident. At that point, I switch over completely because, look, I hate the skateboard guys who don't pay attention and jump in the middle of the road. I don't hate all skateboard people, okay? I'm not a grumpy grandpa.
He just wants you to get off his freaking lawn.
Yes. Okay. I mean, if you're on my lawn, definitely get off my lawn. Okay. But no, and so they're careless people. Actually, it happened to me today randomly, even before I read this story. 2 different people walk. It didn't happen to me. It happened right in front of me. I don't want to O'Reilly it. Okay. And so a guy steps right in front of a car that's coming out. I'm like, dude, pay attention. You almost got run over. And he's like, and he looks and he's like, oh, whatever. And he wasn't a skateboarder. He wasn't drunk. It just happened, right? But if you contribute by being drunk and you're like, oh, whatever, man, and then you run into the car or the car runs into you, yeah, you should take that into account.
Yeah, I think so too. I definitely think so as well. Like, just because you're a pedestrian doesn't mean you get to do everything you want to do, right? And it's okay to walk around drunk as long as you're not making stupid decisions that hurt other people.
Yeah, oh, don't get me wrong. I'm super in favor of walking around drunk. Okay. Now, the final part of this roller coaster ride, though, so don't get off yet, okay? It turns out a lot of these laws are being pushed by the car industry.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see that coming. That swerved around the corner and kind of hit me. Yeah. Okay, and I wasn't even drunk. And then I was like, oh, those devious sons of bitches to shift the responsibility onto the pedestrians so they're not part of the people being sued or, you know, in some way held responsible.
But I can also, look, I understand that there is a biased interest there, right? But I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea to also protect the drivers. Now, as a driver, usually the onus is on you, right? But in some cases, if someone's drunk and they stumble into the middle of the street or they're jaywalking, I mean, what are you going to do? You know, in some cases, usually you can avoid them. I'm not making excuses for people who hit pedestrians. But sometimes it happens. Like, I remember, to the hope this never happens again. this one idiot, I'm driving, and I guess he was checking to see if a bus was coming. He just jumped into the right turn-only lane to see if the bus was coming. That's where I was coming from. I had to really, like, slam my brakes so I didn't hit him. Who does that? Okay, so let's say I did hit him. Would that be my fault? What if I didn't have enough time to react?
Yep.
We need protection too, man.
And by the way, like I said in the skateboarder story, I forget if it was an old school or in a post game, if I'd hit that kid that jumped right in front of me with his skateboard, no one would have listened to me.
Yeah.
They would have said, oh, yeah, you want to look. I was looking. He jumped right in front of me. I didn't hit him. I slammed on the brakes and barely missed him. I wasn't looking at my phone, nothing, right? But nobody will believe you. So I need you to get off my lawn, and I need you to be held responsible if you're drunk walking. Okay, so I know the car industry is pushing it, but still, I'm going to rule in favor of. It's an interesting rule and fairly fair.
Yeah, and it's a proposal, not a rule yet. Just keep that in mind.
So this is your last moments where you can still walk drunk in Spain. Go crazy.